before you start anything. V'hino Adonai Eloheinu aleinu, masi yadeinu konena aleinu, masi yadeinu konenehu. Amen. Okay.
Amen. First of all, in all the interviews I see you, you're smiling and it's always reassuring. It makes everybody feel comfortable. So thank you for that. We're here today, September 13, Kavav Be'elul, conduct this interview in a virtual space with Rav Zalman Schachter-Shalomi. Dear Rabbi, thank you for taking the time. First, how do you like to be called?
Reb Zalman is how everybody calls me.
Wonderful, thank you. The transmission of faith was usually our elders' job. Families had Zaydis and Bubis who infused families with Jewish tradition. Can you expand on how one should feel about belonging to the Jewish people and about continuity?
Let me begin with the wonderful pasuk, She'al avicha v'yagedcha zekenecha v'yomru lach. We learn from this that if you ask your father, the father is going to go like this, Musar avicha, Papa talks like this. Zekenecha Yosede, he talks nice, he is relaxed, and he gives room for the grandchildren a lot more than the father gives for the children, because that's very clear. Sons and fathers, there's always arguments and distance and so on. It's different when you're dealing with a grandfather, because my father's father is my ally. So therefore, Zekenecha v'yomru lach, you talk to your Zayde, he tells it to you in an easy way. Because what's really happening is that nobody can say to somebody, you must do this, you must do that, especially when it comes to spirituality, to intuition, and to feeling. So it's really very important to speak to someone in the next generation to say, aren't you also interested in making this to become a wonderful world? A world in which Hashem is in charge, a world where people love each other, a world where our Mother, the Earth, is happy with the people who live on her, who use her right. When you begin with that, then of course the answer will be that the young people are going to say, count me in, I want that, I want to do that. Then the question will come, have you got an idea how to do that? Well, I can tell you how we used to do it when we wanted to do it in the past. What does it sound to you? What of that stuff can you learn from? That is how that generation, Dor LeDor Yeshavach Ma'asecha, one generation can tell the other one in such a way that the next generation can hear it. When it comes to the issue of faith, people make a big mistake. They think faith, use the word faith as a noun, as if there was something that is there. You can go and buy in the store. Here, have faith. You know. Faith is a verb. I'm faithing. Ani ma'amin. I'm faithing, which means I don't have all the evidence in, but I have an intuition that this is so. And if somebody says, but how do you know? How do you know? I say, I know because I am that. In intuition, I know it. But there's a wonderful story. A chassid came to Reb Moshe of Kobrin. And he said, Holy Rebbe, I'm having trouble saying Ani Ma'amin. So he says, so what do you think, what do you want to do? Not say it? He says, what do you mean I shouldn't say Ani Ma'amin? If I don't say Ani Ma'amin, I'm not a Jew. So why can't you say it? He says, if I really believed it, I would be a different person. So he says, would it be okay if I said, Halavai sha'ani ma'amin? Halavai sha'ani ma'amin. I wish I could believe. And with that begins Emunah. Emunah begins with Halavai sha'ani ma'amin.
It's wonderful. You're connecting many more things than I even thought of touching upon, which is faith is something also earned, because you have to invest to get back. And an older, a Zayde or a Bube, is somebody who has worked hard and now he is collecting the fruit of that faith that he's put
That's
in.
right.
And also I thought that you're going to touch on the Rav Nachman and others who said that a child is somebody who knew everything before, and maybe a Zayde is somebody who is close to know everything soon.
I tell you what, Reb Shlomo used to tell the wonderful story about the teaching that we get from the Malach in the first 9 months in the mother's womb. And he would say, how do I know that I found my real teacher? Because when he teaches me something, I don't feel he teaches me anything new. I know on my intuitive level that I knew this all along. That's the inner Torah that we have. And that's really "V'ha'er einenu b'toratecha," so that we should be able to see again the Torah that you gave us at the time when we were in a mother's womb. There is this wonderful thing, a story that has been around about a 2-year-old who's going into the nursery where his little brother is, and his parents overhear in the intercom system how he says, "Please tell me about God. I'm beginning to forget." You know, this is really a thing. So many people have some kind of a feeling about that, but the way in which people talk about God, you sometimes have to say to somebody, "The God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either," because you have to go to a much deeper place.
I know that you grew up in a difficult time, but did you have a Baba and a Zayde?
Not very much, no.
So who filled that role of the in the family before you moved on to?
It wasn't. It wasn't in the family. It wasn't in the family. It was because I rebelled against what I got from the family. It wasn't until I stood in front of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, and I saw that here is a person who really paid with his life and in his life for his emunah and his smile and his goodwill. You know the Yiddish word verginnen?
Yeah.
And he forgive me to become a tzaddik. You know, it's very seldom that you find people who want you to be even better than they are. You know, but that's what a Zayda usually does. You know, I want you to just meriba leben Gesundheit, and you should become a great.
Before we go to your experience at the Lubavitch Rebbe, I wanted to touch on this link to the past and the transmission. You are one of our links to the past. And when we look at you and listen to you, we have this intuition that we have a Zayde, a tzaddik, a chacham, somebody who has earned your wings. And in a way, could you be the Zayde for all of us, for those who didn't have one?
I want to tell you something. When a person, when children who are about to be bar or bat mitzvah, when the parents bring them to me for a bracha, I feel very much like Yaakov Avinu, Hamalach HaGoel Oti Mikora, Hu Yevarech et Hane'arim V'Yikarevahem Shmi B'Shem Avotai, Avraham Yitzchak V'Yidgul Arov B'Kerev Haaretz. I wish them all really something well, and that is giving a chelik. If I could give a chelik of what I know in my neshama to them, I'd love to do that. Very often, you know, when the kids have, in an earlier generation, it's not right now, but 20 years ago, people were watching Star Trek. And I would say I would say to sometimes, do you know what a mind meld is? They put the two heads together, you know, and you make a mind meld. So I would take those kinderlach and put my head to their head and say, whatever it is, you know, vayatzel min haruach asher alav. I'd be very glad to share with you on a level that you right now you don't have ways to receive it, but there will be time in your life when something will come, and from the transmission you get at this point, you'll be able to get what you need.
I think that there is a simpler, less lofty level about being our Zayde, and it's just being available. You're available.
Well, I tell you, when somebody like you comes and says, would you give something over to the next generation, then, you know, that's hikovtza v'shimu. You know, I want to give over from all my experience in life, which is not to go to extremes and to make room for the other person so they can grow into who they have to become without giving them a mold that they have to become like that.
Tell us, please, how do you remember yourself as a child with regards to Judaism, and mainly, how do you remember feeling God independent of all the texts? Just for the first time, how do you remember meeting God, feeling God?
When my father, Oliver Shalom, took me to his shul, it was a Chevre Kadisha shul, a Hasidic Chevre Kadisha. And when on Rosh Hashanah, I heard the people Shrai on Yom Kippur Shrai, Ba'adin, B'yoim Din, and the talisim were over their heads and so on and so forth. I had Not that I knew anything about God, but I knew that they were standing in front of God, and it gave me a shiver. That was an early thing that I could remember. I also could remember something very interesting. When I would come to shul with my father, I would see the men. On the way next to the next street where my parents had a store, there was a church. And there was a door open to the chapel of the church, and all the women were there with babushkas, and there were candles there. So as a child, I sort of figured that the men are Jewish and the women are Catholic.
A nice mix. Do you think that the nature of a dialogue in one's heart or head is conversation with God?
Definitely, but that's something that you have to um, give over to a child. I'll give you another experience. I was about 9 years old, and one of the cousins of the Belzer Rebbe had come to Vienna to see doctors because Vienna was in those days just like Rochester, Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic. So this Rebbe came there, and it was Friday night in the hotel room, and there was only the candles burning, there was no other light. And they were davening Kabbalah Shabbos and Maariv. And I didn't have a sitter, and everybody was davening and shuckling, and I closed my eyes. And at that point, I sort of, in my mind, I was saying, Dear God, I'm sorry. I'm ashamed I don't know the davening by heart, but I really want you to include me with our prayers all the other people are saying, and make sure that this man who's come to Vienna should get healed and the doctor should be able to help him. And all this was happening not outside because they're davening, you know. And I was going to say this out loud, especially not in German. Mein Muttersprache war Deutsch, you know. I was speaking German at that time. But in my heart, that I often had, that hasn't gone away, except that my image of God has changed from this old kind man in the sky to a whole other way of seeing an expansion that goes way, way to the ends of the universe today, and that gives life to everything, and at the same time makes itself present to us in Shiviti Hashem Lenegdi Tamid, in those letters of Yud Hey Vav Hey, as it were, the Yud on top, the Hey below, the Vav, and the other Hey. So B'Tselem Elokim, so that the head is like the Yud, and arms and shoulders are like the Hey, and the body like the Vav, and pelvis and legs like the other Hey. And I could talk to that one. And I know that the heart of Hashem is there. And that I can talk, and that there's a Shomea Tefillah that's very strong for me.
Maybe we need to take the sitters away. Just like Shimshon Raphael Hirsch said, we need to close all the shuls for 50 years, just so the people can really daven.
Davenology has been my important work. And I've translated the Siddur and the Tehillim in language that makes it much easier for people to say these things. I remember when one of the Siddurim came out with a new English translation, Vatarem Kereim Karni, and you have exalted my horn like a wild ox. To me, that didn't make any sense, that kind of a translation. So I retranslated it so it should be easier to the language of the heart, and let us help people.
That's wonderful. As a child growing up, when you found this connected to Hashem, and even later, did you have doubts in your belief? Do you still have doubts? Can you not have doubts? How do you overcome them? And do you need to overcome them?
I want to tell you something. If anybody tells me that they never have doubts, I don't believe them. Because the doubt is what scrapes off from us the superstition, you know? When you have emunah, and then the emunah tefilot, the superstitions grow on top of that, on top of your faith. You need every once in a while to say, like it ain't necessarily so, you know, Baruch et Hashem HaMevorach. It's the same melody.
Doubts are like the cleaners on the fish, on the Leviathan. They clean the barnacles away.
It scrapes off the barnacles from the ship, as it were, to make it smooth. A friend of mine, Rabbi Fund, or Meir Fund, once when I was speaking about the great necessity for doubt, he said, doubt is such a wonderful do we have a yontif for doubt? And then he says, yes, we do. It is yontif sheni shel golias mishum speke de yoma de speke. It's the day of doubt. The second day of yontif is to celebrate the doubt.
Without doubts, there's no questions. And the way to teach a child is with the manishtana, is to teach them to have questions. So how can we suppress doubts? Then we suppress questions, then there's no learning.
You see, that's what happened to me when I was young. I came in once to Pirkei Agudas Yisrael in Antwerp. I knew they were learning Pirkei Avot, and they would begin with Kol Yisrael Yesh Lehem Chelik L'Olam Haba. And I poured out lies and foolishness and stupidity, opiate of the masses, and so on. I stood at the door because I figured that the kids are going to come and want to beat me up. But the Moreh Shiur was a very wise person. And he said to me, would you like to hear from somebody who agrees with you? And I said, yes. And he brings down the Rambam on Chelek in Sanhedrin, where the Rambam says the people who believe in Olam Haba and they don't really know what spirituality is, a blind person doesn't know what color is, a deaf person doesn't know music. How do they know about spirituality? I want to tell you, I didn't run away. I stayed there. This was my invitation to pour out everything that I had to reject. And once I poured it out, I was ready to receive and go to hell.
How old were you then?
I was 14 and a half.
That's when you learned to be a Jew?
Yeah.
So again, what you need as a Zayde, as a teacher, is to be available.
And to hear out the kids and not to get angry when he's saying, don't call him Shagets. Let me hear what your Shagets has to say. I want to hear. It's a smart Shagets. He doesn't believe in foolish things.
Well, it's always better to be a Shagets when you're young also.
Yes.
It seems that you must have had some support in your Jewish upbringing.
Sure. I tell you what. My Zayde was a shochet in Auschwitz in Poland. That was where later on Auschwitz was. It was a good Jewish city. And he was a chief shochet, a Belzer Chassid. And so, of course, something poured over to me from there. Shabbos and Zmiris at the Shabbos table and so on and so forth. I had this with my mother's milk. But on the other hand, I couldn't stand certain kind of impositions on my mind when I was I grew up in Vienna and went to gymnasium, and I also went to a yeshiva in the afternoon. And I had to reject a lot of the stuff that I got in the yeshiva about taking things literally.
This is actually the purpose of all of this availability and transmission, is you don't feed somebody who is full, you feed people who are hungry. A lot of people more and more today grow up with no support in the Yiddishkeit, no knowledge of what Yiddishkeit, no transmission, no Masorah, no education. Without the Zayda and Abubis, how do you help them connect to the Judaism? They don't even know what to reject. They didn't even have anything to rebel against.
The great thing of the renewal congregations is that they are what I like to call wheelchair accessible, you know? They're Jewish invalids, as it were, and they can come in and they can get something. But you hear many people say, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. So I ask them the question, in which way are you spiritual? What is your spiritual practice? I've had this argument with some of my Chabad friends. They would like to see that people should begin with observance. And I say, that used to be the past. Now you have to give people the ruchnias before you can give them the observance. They're looking very much for, how do I connect right now with God? I can go to yoga, I can go to Hinduism, to Buddhism, to Sufism. What have I got in Yiddishkeit that does that? So somebody like Reb David gives them access to that. And then they come again, and then after a while they say, how do I begin with Shabbos? How do I begin with Kashrut? How do I daven? But first you have to give people the access and say, you can really connect with God. Look how you're doing it right now.
If I may suggest, I think that maybe the key is belonging, because belonging never goes away.
That has to do with, remember, we always, all the davening we do in public, we use Loshen Rabim. We always use the plural. Avinu, Malkeinu, etc., etc. And we come Aleinu Leshaber. We always speak about the we. When we have a good we, then we can't fall out of it. When we are only an I, then we feel alone, we feel lonely, we feel forsaken. And Eli, Eli, lama azavtani, Elokeinu velokei avotenu is not an aziva. I don't know how I can lay it out for you more, but this is what it is. When we pray together, it is much better.
That's the power of minyan. But I'm talking about belonging to people, to my mother, to my father, to my Zayde, to my Bubis, to 100, to 1,000 generations of people who carried me and built me up. And having found that I belong gives me the power to have ruchnius, to give me the power for observance.
We have a problem. The problem is a break in generations. When you go back, many people in America, their grandparents were people who lived through the Depression. All they could think about is how to make a living. And then later on, the next generation, they tried to be integrated into American society and so on and so forth. And they didn't have any much the deeper connection. On the other hand, on the DNA, that's a whole other thing, because I took a sample of my saliva and sent it away. And it came back, yes, I'm a Kohen. I have a connection all the way to Aaron Cohen with this way, because the DNA is there. That's an amazing thing. And so, for instance, when people begin on Rosh Hashanah with da 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 da, the nusach is what wakens up in our cells a cellular memory of generations gone. But most people can't tell you where did the grandfather come from. They say from Russia, from Austria. They don't know. There hasn't been a living connection because we didn't live in the same house with grandparents and great-grandparents. So it's really hard. But I want to say for people to then read history, read some wonderful stories, read Peretz, read Sholem Aleichem, read all these things. And if you're a Sephardi, you have Edot HaMizrach also have wonderful stories that you can read, Chaim Azaz and so on, and get to know what that was like. And even see movies. Seeing Fiddler on the Roof is something that with the melody, something happens to people in that way.
That's wonderful. How do you raise your own family, your children, your grandchildren? How do you inspire them to belong and to be Jewish and to practice?
You know what? A Shabbos Tish is the most important part. A Seder is the most important part. But being a rabbi and doing these things very often with other people, I wasn't so good with my own family. Very often I had to go and lead services on Friday night and couldn't sit long at the tish with my kids and so on. So I'm now doing a lot more than I used to do before with them. And I see what they have learned in the meantime. And they each have improvised on things on their own. And it's very nice to see the new minhagim that they have created, new customs that they have created for their families. And I'm learning now from them.
Because you weren't so stark, did they have to rebel?
No, I didn't hold them this way. You see, I really am very, very much against coercion, kfiya datit, coercion in matters of religion. They were able to express themselves, were able to say they don't believe, and so on. You have to have patience. It isn't, that the non-believing doesn't go away in one session and one argument. But it's so wonderful to see some people who, for instance, they don't believe, but they say, listen, when we come to the Seder, don't forget, I want you to sing with us Vihisha Omda, like you got from your father. It's strange how these things work. They don't go linear. They have to do with other areas of feeling, of intuition, and of memory that isn't quite conscious, and so on and so forth.
It's wonderful. You are hinting on your inspirational spiritual side, and as such, I want to ask you to share with us about your sense of love of God, and how can you love God who is so omnipotent, and the connection between fear and love of God, and also why love God? There's no mitzvah even to love your parents. Why Avinu Malkeinu, why does he need love?
Well, that's an old question, and the Maggid of Mezrich asked this question. How can you force or tell somebody to have a feeling? You can't command that. So he says, yes, but you can command Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, pay attention. And then after you will love. You will love. Look, there's a lot of tzoros in the world. And my uncles and my cousins and all those were killed in the Holocaust. And if I have big questions about how could God permit that, I can get very angry about that. But at the same time, my heart is beating and my consciousness is there. And I don't make my heart to beat, and I don't make my awareness to be aware. It's all happening. I can't figure out all those things. But one thing I do know, the God to whom I can pray isn't necessarily the God of the big cosmos, because the cosmos is so much bigger. Remember, at one point we said the earth is in the center, and the sun and the moon and the stars go around. And then came Copernicus, and the sun is in the center. And now, after Einstein and quantum philosophy, the Ein Sof is the Ein Sof. I don't love the Ein Sof. I don't exist where the Ein Sof is. But I sure love Hashem, because there's a different story. Look, imagine I'm going to this morning, I'm in shul, and I'm taking out the film. I take the shalyad and I kiss the shalyad, and I put it on my arm, and I keep in mind, my heart and my koyach, it's all given over to you, and I love you, and I hope you can see how I make the shin over here. It's all nochach b'nei Hashem. It's done in the presence of Hashem. In that case, I'm not speaking about the infinite God. I'm speaking about the God that makes him herself present to me.
The Ashgacha Pratit?
Ashgacha Pratit is always in the past. When I look in the present, I think I can make all the choices in the world. And when I look back, I see that I have been led, and there was Ashgacha. I mean something else. If I have feeling and I have awareness, does God have less feeling and less awareness than I have? And when I make myself present to God, and I feel that there is nochach b'nei Hashem, Hashem makes himself present to me also. And when I go deeply into Baruch, Atah, then there is something that I feel a presence there. And where did I get it from? Because I was with other people who were able to say Atah and make themselves present to God too in the same way. I mentioned to you the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he was davening, I had such a deep sense of the presence of God which he was addressing in prayer.
So people who daven pave the road to other people.
They attune you. Imagine the orchestra wants to tune up, and the guy with the oboe comes and gives them an A. And then come the other instruments, and they tune up to that A. When we go and daven with a Rebbe, with somebody who's a tzaddik, we tune up to him. Our heart gets tuned up, our mind gets tuned up, and we don't think in foolish, simple terms anymore.
I think that we feel love beyond the words about love.
It is. I can close my ears and say I don't want to have anything to do with it. But when I say there is a love that sustains the universe, and I want to make myself present to that love, and I'll spend the next 15 minutes doing nothing else but saying, God, I want you to be able to love me. I'm right here for you to love me. When we say Ahavat Olam Ahavtanu, Chemla Gedola V'Yitera Chamalta Aleinu, and I make myself present to that love, I can feel it. I get to feel it. Not always do I get to feel it. Sometimes I'm preoccupied and I want to daven, I want to daven fast and be done with it. But when the times come when I can just sit and be present, when I used to see my mother, Alea Shalom, at Lichtmenschen, it was so clear that she was talking with the Rabbi Shalom, with the Shechina. She would take more than a half hour to mention all her grandchildren and great-grandchildren in a prayer at Lichtmenschen. When you're present to such a person, you can't help but feel it.
A lot of Rabbeim that I interviewed, they all mention, if you want to learn how to daven, look up to the women. They daven.
Well, the Apta puts it this way: if you want to learn how to daven, hang out with a davener. You pick up the vibe of the davener this way. And there was a Rav, the founder of the Telzer Yeshiva in Cleveland, Rav Levenberg. When he had a student who had tzveikas and amunah, he had questions about faith, he would say, daven in one siddur with this and this bocher, and you'll get it.
Rabbi Heschel said, one has to approach life as if it's a work of art. When one is young, one must embark on this work of art called defining one's existence. You certainly have. From a Chabad Shaliach in 1960, you pushed the envelope, creating the whole renewal movement, writing books and teaching and inspiring a whole generation to think outside the Siddur. Everybody knows you to be one of the most inspiring rabbis. What is your version, this art project of defining your own existence, and how would you inspire other Jews, young and not so young, to approach it?
Do you remember when you sent me an email? What's my email address?
Davener.
That's right. That's my address. That's my address, Davener. Because I don't, everybody can do theology, but theologians only know about the ideas of God, and they haven't been integrating it. So yes, davening is very important to me, and that I think has been my dagesh chazak, the things that I paid a lot of attention to.
Who are the teachers that influenced you?
Some older Hasidim, ausgewegte Hasidim who were really into davening. One night I was taking a l'chaim with all the Hasidim sitting at the Fabring and hanging out with each other, and one of the leaders of the group said, "Why don't the bochrim daven right?" And I said, "Why don't you tell us what's going on inside of you when you daven?" And there was a chassid there, and his name was Rabbi von Paris, and he started to talk about from Modani to getting to the Shemoneh Esrei. And when he got to Goal Yisrael, he said, "More I won't tell you. The rest is just between Hashem and myself." I want to tell you something. You sit with people like this, and they tell it to you in this way. They're not holding back. That's the best education you can get. From a Rebbe, you can get the exaltedness of Hashem, but from a Chassid, you can get the struggles he has with machshavas zores, ideas that come in the middle of daven, and how he has to push them away, how he has to concentrate again, how he has to use his body into shokol, all these kinds of things you learn from living people. The Rebendele Koska said something beautiful. It says, Tova shah achas b'tshuva masim tov mikol chai olam haba, olam hazeh mikol chai olam haba. So he says, which is this hour? That's the hour before Shabbos goes away. That hour when you sing.
Can you tell us about the work you did with Rav Shlomo?
What can I tell you? We are, I still say we are, not we were. He was a genius in the way in which he told stories. You see, without enchantment, Yiddishkeit does not impress anybody. You have to be enchanted. You have to get into the magic of it, as it were. A mitzvah can be seen as just, what am I doing with those leather boxes here, Or I can say, this is a mitzvah, and I'm enchanted. When Shlomo would tell a story, he wouldn't tell it like it's written in books. He read the story, and in his mind he played a movie of that story, and then he told us the movie that he had seen. That's how he told us the story. And then it would touch us, or he would say, open your hearts wide, and he would take us into a place. Just as it says in the Tehillim, "Su'u she'arim rasheichem v'nasu pitchei olam." Let your imagination open up and see the thing in a magical way.
You represent more than any rabbi that I know the concept of Jewish renewal. Is it spiritualism? Is it a new form of Hasidut? Is it expansion of the boundaries of Judaism? Tell us more about what Jewish renewal means to you.
Every time you say one of the definitions, it limits it. I want to say, as long as people, as there is life in people, life renews itself. The body that you inhabit has renewed itself so many times that every 7 years there isn't any substance left that was there 7 years before. Even the bones have been exchanging the substance. So a thing that is alive renews itself all the time. So the question is not, is Jewish renewal being, how would I say, engineered? That it should have different boundaries, that it should appeal differently to people. All these are very political considerations. But when you watch a tree, you see that underneath the bark, there's the growing edge, the soft, moist thing that goes underneath all the way up to the branches and all the way down to the roots. If someone were to cut this off from the tree, peel it off, the tree would die. Every year, the new growing edge becomes a ring on the old tree and becomes like wood.
I love it. We're talking about Jewish renewal as a natural living religion, right?
Right. It's an unfoldment that this time and space demands of Judaism.
However, we are a religion bound by certain tradition. We're bound by halacha. We're bound by a siddur. We're bound by mitzvot. How far are those rings of renewal going without straying away from the ikar, from the center, from who the religion is?
The ring of this year becomes another ring in the tree. A tree that wouldn't have the rings from the past, the wind would come and would collapse. It needs to have the strength which is made from all the rings that happened before. So Torah and mitzvahs is not being eliminated. On the contrary, we find new ways of doing the same mitzvahs in a way that fits our time. And we will not be the last word because there will be renewal of the renewal.
I subscribe to the renewal, but Jewish life, it's in conflict. It's an internal conflict. I want to know, how does it live with the conflict of our people?
I want to tell you that if you go to the Yeshiva University people or Chabad people, if you're in New York and you go to Anshe Chesed, or you go to B'nai Jeshurun, or you go to Romemu, they all have learned something from us. I see the talitot that I designed with the beautiful rainbow colors. You'll find them in Orthodox shuls too. There is a curve. And in that curve there are some people on this side that are the Neturei Karta. And there are some people on this side that are the renewal people. And in between is the bulk of people who are shul goers if they go to shul, and not shul goers if they don't go to shul. And they are the bulk. But the avant-garde is over here. And there's always an avant-garde in every generation. When the Baal Shem Tov first came, that was the avant-garde. After some generations, Hasidism was getting a little stale. So came the Yita Kodesh and Reb Simcha Bunim, and they became the avant-garde, as it were.
They were burning Rambam's books in the time of his generation.
Because he was the renewal person at that time. Why was he writing the Guide to the Perplexed? Because there were some people who were studying philosophy of Aristotle, and they didn't know how can I be a Jew when I understand the world, nature, from Aristotle's point of view. So the Rambam came and showed them, don't take some of the words literally that are in the Torah, the hand of God, the eyes of God. God doesn't have these attributes.
You know, it's interesting, a lot of conservative shuls, or even reform shuls, they always have an Orthodox rabbi. Are you more of a chassid, or you're very halachic? Where do you define yourself?
I don't do that this way, but I call the thing by the name of integral halacha. Integral halacha is, first of all, saying that it has to be backward compatible. In other words, what we are doing, we're learning Gemara, we're learning Shulchan Aruch, we're finding out, and we're asking the question, why was this halacha done in such and such a way in those days, by Yamim Haim? And how do you do it Bisman Hazeh? How do you do it at our time? So then we see that some things have to be updated. The social situation is no longer homosocial. When we were in a homosocial setting, that's to say, men were separate, women were separate, they didn't talk to each other. But the very same ones with the black hats and the beards are in offices where there are young women working. So the social situation is heterosocial. So what happens is that you need to have things in a shul the same way. There are women who know a lot more than men today, and they want to have an aliyah, and they want to be able to lead in davening. And so we are making room for them. So you ask the reason halachically, where did it come from that we don't call women to the Torah? It's because kavod hatzibur. The din says it is kavod hatzibur. Then I say, what's the kavod hatzibur today? It would not be a kavod. For our tzibur, it's a kavod to call a woman.
What do you see yourself more, a Kohen, a king, a Navi, or an Israel?
First of all, I'm a Kohen. I'm a Kohen by birth, and I went and got my DNA tested, and yes, I'm a direct descendant of Aaron HaKohen. I see myself part of an organic thing that's called Yidden in the Welt, you know? And there are Jews in the world, and I do my part of that, and other people do their part. And it's a foolish idea to say that everybody should have the same thing. Look, the head and the foot couldn't live without the head, and the head would have trouble without the foot. And so that's an organic thing, yeah? So the same way, I want to say Yiddishkeit needs the Litvakis, it needs the Galiciana, it needs the Teimanim, it needs the Haredim, and it needs the renewal people. And we're all part of one organism. And when people don't understand that, they don't have a notion of what is Klal Yisrael. And there are some people who want to limit Klal Yisrael only to the Haredim, and that's a mistake.
Well, the word Klal includes in it the assumption that there are more than one.
That's right.
Who are your heroes in the text? In the Torah, in the Nevi'im, in the Gemara, in the Rishonim?
It depends which set we are reading. Listen, when I learn Pirkei Avot, you know, and I'm with Rabbi Akiva, I like Rabbi Akiva. I think he was great. You know, if somebody could say that Shir HaShirim is Kodesh Kodeshim, then it's wonderful, you know. And I like, when I go into history, I like the Ramban a great deal, Nachmanides a great deal. And I like the HaChaim, and I like the Baal Shem Tov. They're all my heroes. The question is, what do I want to do? If I want to daven, I take as a dugma for myself, as a model, my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. Because when I was there with him when he was davening, you know, so I'm there with him. So I tune into him. But for instance, when I want to learn a Blat Gemara, I tune into other people.
We always make people heroes so we can follow in their footsteps. In whose heroes' footsteps do you follow, Rav Zalman?
Well, I want to tell you, I can't follow in somebody's footsteps when I have to go into territory that they didn't go into. I went in the footsteps of my Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok, and afterwards my Rebbe, Reb Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch. And sometimes I went in the footsteps of the Baba Rebbe because I would hang out with him too. And sometimes I was in the footsteps of monks and Buddhists and Sufis because they all had something to teach me. But where I have to go today is uncharted territory.
You mentioned that you learned from different heroes, but you were a shaliach of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and learned with him. He is considered the king among men. Can you tell us what you learned from him, from the movement, and how do you integrate it in your own word?
When I went to see him, I was clear that he could see my neshama, and I was clear that he could guide me in the way in which I have to serve God. And every move that I made, whether it was to a congregation or to Hillel Foundation or to a university seat, I asked him about that and I got his bracha. There were some things that he had to say and that he said that I didn't feel completely at ease with, because I don't believe that the world was created 5,773 years ago on the 25th day of Elul. What I understand of the cosmos is far way beyond. And when I was with him, I didn't argue because it was necessary for him to say that. What I learned from him was much deeper stuff.
Not everybody is fortunate enough to follow in the footsteps of a Rebbe, to seek a bracha, to get a bracha. How does somebody who doesn't know, who is confused, who is trying to find his way, choose a Rebbe?
The first thing is go to Jewish places and see where neshama catches fire. You know, I can't go and say all the people should go to that person. After the Baal Shem Tov, people would go to different rebbes for different things. It's only lately that it got to be that if you are this kind of a chassid, you don't go to the other rebbe. But in the early past, you would learn this midat tova, this particular thing from this rebbe, and such another thing from another rebbe, because you went to them to teach you things how to serve God better. So if anybody is interested to serve God better, I would say go to a place where God is being served and you ask, do I feel anything there? If they don't feel anything there, they go and shop again to another place.
Tell us more about your neshama going on fire.
Shlomo Oliver Sholem had a good way of saying it. When the teacher tells you something, that you say, aha, I knew this already. That is the Torah that the Malach, the angel, taught you when you were in your mother's womb during the 9 months of pregnancy and you were being taught the Torah that is special for you. When Hasidim used to talk about Rebbes, they would say, my shorish haneshama, the root of my soul is with this Rebbe. That's what I mean. I remember when I first went in to see Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok, I came out from his presence and I was crying. I had no reason to cry, except that it felt to me that in my neshama, now I'm home. Now I have a person from whom I could learn to serve God the right way.
I love everything you say, Rav Zalman, and so do people who listen to it. In light of the confusion and assimilation, where most Jews don't really have a clue, what would you tell a person about being Jewish, and why is it worth it for him, for her, to preserve it?
Everything that I would have to say why would talk to the head. I would say, you want to know? Start Friday night making Shabbos. Ask your neshama how you'd like to do Friday night. You want to light candles? You want to have challah? You want to make kiddush? You want to sit in front of the candles and you want to sing and say, I'm relaxed, I'm at home, I'm doing Shabbos. And they learn Friday night. And once they have Friday night done, then I'd send them to Shalashudis. And to sit with people who are singing those songs that are sad songs because they're really singing, oh, Rabbi Shalom, what am I going to do? A week is coming and I'm not yet ready fully to take holiness into the week. And then I would finally send them for Shabbos morning. And once they learn Shabbos, they'll learn the rest of it because all the mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs are connected to Shabbos. They'll learn Torah, but Shabbos is the entrance point.
A lot of people know that they're Jewish, they like being Jewish, and they just don't understand the whole concept of observing, of serving. The best example is to say, I'm proud to be an American, but I don't practice my Americanship every day. I don't go to my American prayer book. I just belong. I'm American, and it feels good.
You drive on the right side of the road and you watch whether you get a green light and you pay your taxes and you are respectful of people. So I'm saying the same way with a Jew. There are certain things that a Jew does. Take a look, a mezuzah. How wonderful it is you walk out of your house and you touch the mezuzah and you remember, aha, I'm a Jew. You know, you come to your office, and again, there's a mezuzah at your office door, and you touch the mezuzah. Sooner or later, you put on film, and then you get to know how to do that. But the ikar, I think, is Shabbos. I keep coming back to Shabbos, and then I keep coming back to that every day, in whatever language you use, you should talk to God a little bit. Even to say, I'm angry with you. Because people who have never been angry with God can't love God. You have to be broiges with Rabbi Shalom. Show me a person who is in love with a beloved who doesn't get from time to time broiges.
You have to be in the conversation.
Right.
Where do you see God in the daily life around you, and how can you translate it to a person who doesn't see it?
I feel my pulse, and I don't make it work. I'm not in charge of making my heart beat, but my pulse is there. So Reb Nachman says, Dofek Dodi, Kol Dodi Dofek. The voice of my beloved is the pulse. Do I feel my pulse? Thank you, God. You make my heart beat. I take a breath. Thank you, God. You fill my lungs with oxygen. Asher Yotzar is such a remarkable prayer that I would want to teach it to everyone I can. And to say, can you sit down for a moment and become transparent to God and say, Galui v'yadu lefnei kisei kavadecha. Everything is, you see everything in my kishkes and my heart. You see it all. You make it work for me. I thank you for that because it's a miracle. Rofei chol basar umafli lasod.
What you're saying is wonderful, but it assumes that I know what you're talking about.
You're still talking that it has to go through the head. There was a German non-Jew. His name was Rudolf Otto. He walked into a shul in Algiers on Yom Kippur. And it touched him so much that he wrote a book about the idea of the holy. Franz Rosenzweig was on the edge of converting to Christianity. He went to a shul and he was with the people who were davening, and he changed his mind and he became an important Jewish theologian and philosopher. It is the exposure that people have to people who are actual believers. And that's what I would want to recommend. You have to be with an actual believer. Look, I'm talking to you now. And I know you're recording and I'm recording. But Ayin Roe, Ozen Shomat, the Rebbeinu Shalom is recording also. I don't want to say things that God would then say, Zalman, you're a liar. Zalman, you made an overstatement. I have to be, I'm being overheard. I'm being seen.
Judaism says, Kol Adam Olam Melo.
Yeah.
Saving a life is equal to saving the whole universe.
Yes.
Is one person's, one soul, really a whole universe?
There is a thing in geometry called fractals that replicates themselves all the way. You can see the whole cosmos in a drop of water, and in every soul is everything. I, in me right now, have Hamas and I have Netanyahu. We are part of everything. This is the whole understanding of the holistic, the wholeness of it all, that it's inseparable. We are inseparable. So if I treat a person in the cosmic way, that that person is unique and is needed in the universe, then that's I'm Mikayim the whole world.
So each person is a DNA in the world.
It's part of that, yes.
I like that. It makes us also connect to one another, having a lot more meshutaf, a lot more in common with each other.
Look, I am breathing here in Boulder. I'm sure that I'm breathing some molecules that you breathed out someplace else because the wind and so on and so forth. We can't separate life. Life, that's why you have chayim in a plural. We're all alive. Ve'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elokeichem chayim kulchem hayom. Yeah.
God is not only an answer, but it's also a question, a challenge. How can God let bad things happen? If I feel that God is my protector, how can God let me lose my mother, my child, God forbid? Building the way to bigger things like a Holocaust, but for me, pain starts with one person.
If you think that I could give an answer to that and sit here in Boulder, you're mistaken. If I had an answer to that, I'd go to Washington. I would scream it out into the whole world. I have an answer to that. The only answer I have is that we have been given freedom of choice, and the freedom of choice led us into a situation. I also have another answer that is only good for the head and it doesn't help at all. If I look what happened in Europe, I would say it's terrible, terrible. And then I look what happened in Madison Square Garden a few months ago when there was a Siyum Hashas, and there were thousands of people there who had gone and done the Daf Yomi every day. Such a thing didn't happen before the Holocaust. Do I understand? I don't understand. And don't ask me to, don't I have the same problem? I want to understand why God permits that. But I can be your colleague in that. I can tell you, how could I help what I'm feeling? If I'm feeling angry because a young child has been given leukemia and is dying, then I can't, how could I say Baruch Shamar V'Haya Ha'olam when I'm feeling what I'm feeling? So I have to let it out. And I said, Rebbeinu Shalom, you shouldn't have done that. Look at what Eichad, the whole thing that we say on Tisha B'Av, we are saying, you were the one who gave us the trouble.
Our heroes argued with God. We can argue with God too.
That's what Avraham Avinu began already. He said, Shofet Kol Haaretz Lo Yaseh Mishpat. You're the judge of the world. You won't do justice.
And how would you inspire a young person today to take on a mission in Tikkun Olam?
When I sit with a young person, I ask him, what do you aspire to? What do you dream about? What do you think you want to do in the world? And I let them talk. My best thing when I was in the university was my office hour. And when my dean asked me, what am I doing? I said, I give ear. I give good ear. My students talk to me and I'm listening. And as I'm listening, they are already moving into the right direction. I really want to say this important. When you talk to young people, is not to try and tell them things, but to evoke from them. It's right in there. There are kids coming down now that really have one task, to heal the planet. Wonderful neshamas are coming down. I meet them everywhere.
But they try to heal themselves. Is healing themselves taking part in healing the planet? Is that how you heal yourself? You're part of a bigger struggle?
I'm always, saying that's not the only model. There are some people who say, I have to heal myself first. There are some people who will say, is there the Jewish World Service? Can I go to Uganda and help the people there? There are some people who have gone and worked with Palestinians because that's the best way they can make peace. I want to find out from them, what is it that moves you? What is it that draws you? And that then I can help them.
What is Tikkun Olam?
The way people talk about fixing the world is to make it stop. Now it is perfect and it doesn't do anything anymore. And I want to say no. Tikkun Olam is to get the world to such a place that there should always be a little bit less perfect, so that the striving can keep on going. So when people are making Tikkun Olam, now I fix a little of this, then I have to fix a little of that.
There's a great fascination with Eastern Oriental mysticism. You want to tell us about the connection between Judaism and mysticism?
I tell you very simple. When I was with the Dalai Lama, I really had it clear that he means to do the same thing that I mean to do. And I cannot say that he should have to do daven in Hebrew. He has to daven in Tibetan. And the Hindus have to do it in their language and in their form. And the Rabbi Shalom would be very bored if everybody would be doing the same thing. So I think we have to do it, we have to honor the differences.
But we are attracted, Jews are attracted.
They were hungry, and there they were fed. And the average shul was saying, we don't believe in reincarnation, we don't believe in the afterlife, we don't even really believe that God listens to our prayer, but we're still going to say Adon Olam Hashem Alach. And then they went to Guru so-and-so and would say, yourself, the great self is God. All you have to do is go within, recite this mantra, and you're right there, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. And these people were saying, that's better, it's much better than what I found in the shul. That's the reason why they went to those places. Whichever shul taught you how to do breathing exercises for expanding consciousness.
That's what you said, that your new age is bringing that into our shul today.
Amen, you got it. Sei mal gesund, Sully.
Before Zmira, I have one more question. Can you make deals with God?
We are a community that has made a deal with God. That's what the Berit is. And individual people can also do that. And Yaakov Avinu was saying, we were just reading it this week, if you will give me lechem lechol, ubeged lilbosh, when I come back here, you will be my God, and I will offer you here sacrifice on this place. That was a deal that he made with God. You look at Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, when I say, Rabbi Shalom, please give me another year. And during this year, I will try very much to be aware of how you are deploying me in your service, and I will serve that way. Okay. V'taher libeinu, v'taher libeinu, v'taher libeinu, li'avdecha be'emet. למען לא ניגל הריק, למען לא ניגל הריק ולא נלד לבהולו. מי זהו איש ירא השם, מי זהו איש ירא השם, Yavavorenu, Yavavorenu, Yerenu, B'derech Yivcha. Leman lo nigalarik, leman lo nigalarik, velo neiled la behavolo.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a Shana Tova, a wonderful year, and I'll give you a hug, a virtual hug. Thank you so much.